We are team number 2 and we are going to talk about the Indo-European family. A family of languages is when a group of two or more languages are related by a decent or progressive differentiation from, from the same parent speech. Well, the Indo-European family has had various names through history. One of them was Aryan, which is now only used to designate the languages that are located in India. And also, another name is Indo-Germanic. But all these names didn't show the geographical extent of the family, like the most widely employed name now, which is Indo-European. We don't have a written record of the common Indo-European language, but it is possible to make reconstructions of its lexicon and inflections by making a comparison of its descendants. And in the image that we can see, they are pointed out the main groups of surviving languages because of their similarity. They are Indian, Iranian, Armenian, Hellenic, Albanian, Italic, Balto-Slavic, Germanic, Celtic, Hittite, and Tocharian. The first one that we are going to see is Indian. The Vedas, or the sacred books of India, are the oldest literary texts preserved in any Indo-European language. Some examples of them are the Rig Veda and the Atharva Veda. Well, those books were the base of Brahman philosophy, and for a long time they were preserved by oral transmission by the priest before being committed to reading. The use of Sanskrit was later extended to various readings under the influence of native grammarians. The most important of them was Panini in the 4th century before Christ. Then it was given a fixed literary form to the language, and now it is known as Classical Sanskrit. Besides Sanskrit, there existed a large number of local dialects that were used in a colloquial form. They were known as Prakrits. A number of these eventually attained a literary form, and one in particular was Pali, about the middle of the 6th century before Christ, and this language became the language of Buddhism. Next is Iranian. At the northwest of India and covering the Great Plateau of Iran, we can find the important group of languages called Iranian. The people that lived there was constantly traveling and probably was a lot in contact with members of the Indian branch. For those subsequent movements, they have carried Iranian languages into territories as remote as southern Russia and central China. Their remains fall into two divisions: Avestan, the sacred book of the Zoroastrians, and Old Persian, that it is only preserved in some inscriptions, which record chiefly the conquests and achievements of Darius and Xerxes. A later form of Iranian language was Middle Iranian, which is the ancestor of Modern Persian. Modern Persian is also known as Farsi, and it has been the language of an important culture and an extensive literature since the 9th century. It contains a large Arabic influence, so that's why their vocabulary looks so similar today to us. Armenians conquered a small area south of the Caucasus Mountains and the eastern end of the Black Sea, and whose language may have been influenced Armenian in their phonology and their accent. We were allowed to know Armenian since the 5th century of our era through a translation of the Bible. Hellenic. The entrance of the Hellenists into the Asian was a gradual one and was preceded in a series of movements by groups speaking different dialects of the common language. They spread not only through the mainland of Greece, absorbing the previous populations that were there, but also into the islands of the Aegean and the coast of Asia Minor. The achievements of the Athenians in architecture, sculpture, science, philosophy, literature, in the Great Age of Pericles were extremely important for the subsequent civilization. The Aric dialect became the basis of a koine. The conquest of Alexander established this language as the general language of the Eastern Mediterranean for purposes of international communication. Next is Albanian. To the northwest of Greece, on the eastern coast of the Adriatic, is the small branch called Albanian. The Albanian vocabulary is so mixed with different languages like Latin, Greek, Turkish, and some Slavonic elements, this owing to conquest and to other causes. And for this mix, Albanian has been recognized as an independent member of the Indo-European family.
Italic. The Italic branch has its center in Italy. Most people suggest that the language of Rome was only Latin, but Latin was only one of a number of languages found in this area. Its remarkably diverse culture is due to its climate and geographical situation. In Tiber North, people spoke Etruscan, northwestern of Italy, Ligurian, northeast, Venetic, southeast, Messapian, and in the southern Italy and Sicily, Greek. Greek was the language of numerous Greek colonies. As Rome colonized Spain and Gaul, the district west of the Black Sea, northern Africa, the islands of the Mediterranean, and even Britain, Latin spread into all these regions until its limits became practically coterminous with those of the Roman Empire. All of these languages were in time driven out by Latin as the political influence of Rome became dominant. And the greater part of this area, it has remained the language, though in altered form, to the present day. The various languages that represented the survival of Latin in different parts of the Roman Empire are known as the Romance or Romantic languages. Other languages on the Iberian Peninsula are Catalan, with an extensive literature, and Galician in the northwest, similar to both Spanish and Portuguese. The most spoken Romance languages are Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Italian. About a dozen Romance languages are spoken by smaller populations. Classical Latin was a literary language with an elaborate and somewhat artificial grammar, the spoken language of the masses. Vulgar Latin. The Romance languages, while representing a continuous evolution from Latin, are not derived from the Classical Latin of Cicero and Virgil. Vulgar Latin, like all languages, was constantly changing. It also differed from, from the normal Latin. It was not only simpler in inflection and syntax, but also to a certain extent divergent in vocabulary. Balto-Slavic. The Balto-Slavic branch covers a vast area in the eastern part of Europe. It falls in two groups of the Baltic and the Slavic. There are three Baltic languages: Prussian, Latvian, and Lithuanian. Prussian is now extinct, replaced by German Latvian. It is spoken by 2 million people in Latvia, and Lithuanian is spoken by about 3 million people in the Baltic state. It preserves certain simple phrases in Sanskrit. The earliest form in which we possess a Slavic language is a part of the Bible, and certain liturgical texts translated by the missionaries Cyril and Methodius in the ninth century. At the present time, they fall into three divisions: East Slavic, West Slavic, and South Slavic. The similarities among the various languages of the Slavic group indicates that they were practically identical, or at least were united by frequent intercourse. East Slavic includes three varieties: Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian. West Slavic includes four languages: Polish, Czech, Slovak, and Sorbian. South Slavic includes Bulgarian, Serbo-Croatian, Slovene, and modern Macedonian. The intelligibility is the difference between them, and they constitute the largest group of Slavic languages. Moreover, the people speaking the Baltic languages must have lived for many centuries in fairly close contact with the Slavs. After the two had separated from the parent Indo-European community, the Slavic languages constitute a more homogeneous group than the languages of some other branches. Germanic. Germanic or Proto-Germanic is the form common form that the languages of the Germanic branch had before they became differentiated. The languages descended from it are divided in three groups: East Germanic, North Germanic, and West Germanic. In East Germanic was spoken Gothic. For a time the Goths played a prominent part in European history for their extensive conquest. Gothic survived the longest in Crimea until vestiges of it were noticed. North Germanic is found in Scandinavia, Denmark, Ireland, and the Faroe Islands. From about the 11th century on, dialect difference became noticeable. The Scandinavian languages fall into two groups: an Eastern group including Swedish and Danish, and a Western group including Norwegian and Icelandic. West Germanic. West Germanic is an important group to us which English belongs. It is divided in two branches, High and Low, by the operation of a second, or High German, sound shift analogous to that described before as Grimm's law. This change by which West Germanic P, T, K, D, etc. were changed into other sounds occurred about AD 600 in the southern or mountainous part of the Germanic area, but did not take place in the lowlands to the north. We then distinguish as Low German tones Old Saxon, Old Low Franconian, Old Frisian, and Old English. The last two are closely related and constituted a special or Anglo-Frisian subgroup. High German was popularized by Luther's translation of the Bible, and since the 16th century has gradually established itself as the literary language of Germany. Celtic. Celtic languages were spoken across much of Europe and in Asia Minor, at the beginning of the Christian era in Gaul and Spain, in Great Britain, and in Western Germany, and also northern Italy. Today, they are restricted to the northwest fringe of Europe and a few diaspora communities. In the areas in which they were once dominant, they have left but little trace of their presence. Celtic languages arrived also to Britain and probably were Gaelic or Gaelic Celts. Some of these may have been driven to Ireland by the later invaders, and from there may have spread into Scotland and the Isle of Man. The modern representatives of the Brythonic division are Welsh, Cornish, and Breton, spoken by minorities in France and the British Isles. These languages are not destined to survive this competition. It seems inevitable that eventually another branch of the Indo-European family of language will disappear. Watch a video related to this topic. That will be all, and thanks for watching.